So hello and welcome back to the channel. I'm back. I didn't expect to be. Let's see how long I can last. And in today's miniseries, we'll be building two-factor authentication UI. As you can see, this is an array of inputs. The input itself is abstracted, but we can read the value in React. And also it's pretty similar to what you can see in Apple two-factor authentication. So yeah, this is our common pattern. You can use that to input some security pin or to do some parental control, anything like so. Let's get going. So we will start literally from the scratch. I'm going to switch to my folder in the terminal. Okay, and here I can just type npx create react app. I'm gonna be using TypeScript. I grew really fond of it in my latest projects. So check, is that the correct command? Yeah, it should be. And the name will be to say in grid UI is fine. Let's install that. We will be also adding the validation of the pin, and maybe we'll add it to some kind of modal window, because that's often what happens, that it just pops up in front of you. Okay, this is looking good. Yes, config file is automatically created. Happy hacking. Okay, cool. Let's just switch to this folder and open Visual Studio Code here. Okay, open the terminal and let's get it running. Here, I'm gonna bring this here, and we're good to go. Okay. So first things first, we can basically get rid of almost everything here, as we're not gonna be using that at all. And now let us think, what do we need? We should define the number of inputs that we'd like to render. And I'm gonna call this parental in length. Okay, and that's just my style of naming. Is something is a true constant, meaning it's it's a name for some value, not a return value from some function. I tend to use the underscore and the uppercase. Okay, that's one thing. Then the second thing that we need is a state which will hold the pin value. And you might think, well, let me bump this up. Oh, this is good. And you might think that storing our pin as a string might be good, or maybe storing a pin as a number, because pin is a number in the end, is a correct approach. But what I will do is I will store it in an array, and therefore the value of given pin on given index is corresponding to given input. So this is input 1, input 2, and so on and so forth, right? So we're gonna use a state, obviously, and I'm gonna say this is pin and set pin. I'm gonna use state from React, and what I would like to start with is an empty array filled with undefined values. So I'm just gonna say create me new array that is the length of parental pin length, and this creates an empty array that has a length of 4. You can see that very easy. To components tab, and here, sorry, this is null, not undefined. But it doesn't matter really. We'll change it a little bit. We can define the type for our state, because useState is a generic function, and you can say that we expect here to have number or null, right? So we're storing an array of numbers or an array of nulls, or combination of numbers and nulls. Okay. This is good. What we'll need also is a way to react to our user providing an input to our pin input grid. So I'll create onPinChanged function, and it's gonna take 2 arguments. It's gonna be number or null, so basically the value that user provided, and the index in which the change occurred, right? And this index will correspond to the indexes in our pin array. Okay, for now, this ain't gonna do much. We're just gonna log pin entry, and we're just gonna log an index. Okay, and that's the most of the work done here. Now, let's create a separate component. We're gonna call it pin input grid. Okay, and it's gonna take 2 props: onPinChanged function that we're providing here, and the pin itself. Okay, so we're providing the function to change the value and the state itself. Pretty easy. Now, the most of our work will be done in that component. Pin input grid ESX. Okay, because we're using TypeScript, obviously. And what do I need? I'm gonna need React first. That's a no-brainer. And then I need the component and basic component we all know. it looks like this, right? And then we can return mapping. And we should export it. Okay, let's use that here. We'll see a problem because types doesn't match, meaning the pin input grid is expected to accept on pin change and pin. So let's fix that real quick. Interface. You can define props using interface, and this is just an object with the specified types of entries, right? So I can just say pin input grid props are pin. It's an array of number or null values, and then on pin changed, which is a function that accepts number or null, and an index that's a number. Just modify the state so it doesn't have return type. It does not return anything, so the return type is void. Okay, that's good enough for now. Just need to say that this is functional component that has these props, and this should be enough to compile successfully. Except it's not. Okay, now we have that input grid. Okay, so this is fine. Let's see what's next. Well, we have to create the render function that will render the inputs that we expect. We accept, well, 2 inputs, right? And just to be on the very same page, I will pass the amount of inputs expected from the parent. So I'm gonna say pin input length. This is another prop, and this is equal to parental pin length. So just pin length better. We can refactor that by pressing F2. Okay, this is good. We have to add it as a prop, so pin length is definitely a number. Okay. And what are we missing here? In input length. Sorry. Well, pin length is actually better. Okay, now we should be fine. Okay, good. And get rid of the logo. Now, how to create an array of components in React? The most known approach, the most popular approach, is to use map, right? But we don't have an array on which to map, right? Well, we could do the mapping on the pin, which is an array of specified length. But what I want, maybe could do that, but I'm gonna show you an alternative approach to that problem. Okay, so we can instead use Rfrom function here, because every expression that's valid in TypeScript can be written here. So I'm going to do something different than using map. can use Rfrom and specify the pin length here. Read that from our props. And then the second function, second argument is a function that is like map function that I can provide. So first, the first argument can be ignored. That's placing underscore here. And now I can just say input, right? And this should render 4 inputs for us. Okay, so this is good. Very good. What's next? Okay, this does look correct to me. How we are on minutes. Okay, I think we can carry on. So, the next step is actually to use the reference here. That's what I'm thinking. Because to take a look at that, we can move across the inputs using tab. Very good. But the problem is we'll also have to move back between the inputs using backspace. So that will work like this. If there's something here, delete it, and if it's empty and someone presses backspace, move back. And to shift the focus, we have to have the reference to the DOM element that is created in the browser, not to the to something that exists in the virtual DOM. So what we need is actually a reference to an array of inputs. And I can create it easy using UserRef, providing the type of HTML input element and saying that this should be an array and it starts as an empty array. Now, the problem is how to actually fill it. But take a look at the ref value we have here, the ref attribute. It is null, undefined, React ref object, or a function, right? And this is interesting because we can have an instance of HTML input element or null and do something with it. So let's see. We'll write a function saying that if we have the element, then let's input that under given index, right? And this is how I can store this here. 4 references in an array. Okay, so this is how you create the reference array. So that's cool, really good. Let me see. What else do we need? We'll need some functions, obviously. The easiest one to write is the one that should be changing the focus, right? Because we will have to move forward after one digit is in given input. We'll have to move to the next input after that, or move backwards after using backspace on given input. So I need a function to switch the focus between inputs. And I will write it like change pin focus is equal to, index number. Okay, so this is the index of the pin that I would like shift to. If that's gonna be 0, I'm gonna focus into the first input. That's gonna be 3, then I'm gonna focus into the last because we have 4 inputs. So let's find the reference that we're talking about. And this is current pin index. And if it exists, I can just call focus function on it. Okay, we're not using that yet, but it's good that it's there. So I believe we can continue in the next episode where we'll actually write the logic for providing the input and going backwards. And I will see you there. Goodbye.